Welcome to another episode of Destination Linux Podcast.
Welcome to episode 77. I'm Rocco, and with me this week is Ballistic Overkill's newest candidate, Ryan.
That's right, I am tier 12.
And there is also Zeb, who was with us last night.
And I'm still tier 0.
Oh, sorry. And Michael, the ninja.
The ninja, exactly. I slice and dice.
Uh-huh. And we are super excited this week because we have with us a guest, Ryan Sipes from Thunderbird. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing awesome. I am really happy to get to talk to you. I've been trying to get an interview with you for over a year, and it's just never ended up happening, but I am super excited. So you are right now the community manager for Thunderbird.
That's right.
You were formerly with System 76. You were with Mycroft at one time. You have all the social media outlets. But before we get into all of the work that you've done in the open source community, let's get to know you a little bit and tell us about your first experience with Linux or open source.
Sure. Well, I used open source software back probably as long as I've been using a computer, but I didn't know that it was open source software. You know, I remember now thinking back, there were programs that I used whenever I was still on Windows that back in like junior high that I didn't even realize were pieces of open source software, various programs. You know, obviously everyone can say like things like Firefox, but you know, also I remember GIMP sometime in there, giving that a try.
Right.
Time I didn't know anything about it beyond it allowed me to do the things that I wanted to do with images. And I would say probably my freshman year of high school, I probably was aware of Linux before then, but that's the first time that I put it on a disk and actually booted into Linux. And I remember it being pretty hard because you had to compile software then that you wanted to use generally. But I remember just being struck by this idea that I could change anything about this environment that I was in. You know, it was a GNOME 2. I think it might have been Ubuntu. I'm fairly certain Ubuntu was the first thing that I used. And if it wasn't that, then it might have been Mandrake. But I'm pretty sure it was Ubuntu. And I remember looking online at changing a theme. And then I started digging into that more and started changing things about the desktop that, you know, that I thought at the time was like really cool. I don't remember all the stuff that I did. I just remember just changing everything just for the sake of changing it. And
just because you could.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it was like throughout my high school Linux time was all about making my desktop looks really, really cool and showing friends how cool my desktop was. So like wobbly windows, like that was like the most awesome thing. The cube, the desktop cube was everything. Like I would show my friends that as soon as they came over, it's like, look at what you can do with this. And then they're like, well, what else can you do? And it's like, well, okay.
That's not important about that. It's not about the cube.
But look at the cube.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was a rough time for Linux too. That was, I mean, now when I talk to people about Linux who haven't been using it since back then, you know, it seems like a foregone conclusion that it would have the prominence that it has now, especially in, you know, tech and the world of startups and, you know, big companies like Google. But back then it did not feel like a foregone conclusion. That it was like you would talk to, you know, 9 or more than that, like 9.9 out of 10 people had no idea what you were talking about when you start talking about Linux. And then you'd like try to introduce someone to it and they'd be like, yeah, but where's my games? Like, I want to play.
Of course, the game question always comes up, right?
Yeah.
Always.
Or it's like somehow I just had this happen recently. I moved someone over to Linux and it still happens. And I don't know how this happens. And this is not a fault of Linux anymore, I don't feel like. But everyone has that one program that only they use.
Yes.
And it's like, and you get somebody moved over and they're happy for like 3 weeks. And then they're like, I tried to use this completely obscure program last week and it didn't work. And it's like, well, what does that program do? And then they go on to explain like this incredibly niche, like thing that they do. And it's like, wow, like that is very specific that program did that. And so back then that was much harder. Now most people honestly can sit down in front of a Linux machine and frankly not even care that they're on Linux. But that back then was not the case.
Right.
And I was a bad kid. I mean, I wasn't a bad kid, but I was just like, I was a rebel, like that's what I felt like. I mean, probably all teenagers are, but one time I went through the computer lab at my school and installed Linux on all the machines and just
that's not a rebel. That's a smart person.
I just wiped out the hard drive and sitting back and just watching.
Yeah, when I go on team events now, like where I work, everyone knows I'm the big Linux fan. So like we were at a hotel doing a team event and everyone were walking by computers and I'm like, that will be Linux by tomorrow. That will be Linux by tomorrow. Like anything I see is going to have Linux on it. But you mentioned that you started using open source software, didn't even realize it was open source. Did you have any pre-knowledge or use of Windows at that time and you just still found the ability to tweak and customize? Yeah,
well, up until high school, up until a freshman in high school, I had not put Linux on anything. Like I said, I probably was aware of Linux in some way, shape, or form just because I lived on the internet at the time, which was really painful because I lived in rural Missouri. So I had dial-up internet until the day I left for college.
I'm sorry.
So people take for granted. I still try not to take for granted having fast internet because I remember downloading Ubuntu at home and just having it connected for like a week and a half. Like just focusing on this one thing. And I had a download manager back then. Now the downloads are a little smarter. Like if they fail, sometimes you can hit retry on current route. Back then, that was not okay. If it failed halfway through, you had to start over. So I had like a download manager that handled some of this and tried to, restart it.
I remember that exact problem when I first like fully embraced Linux. That problem was so annoying that I joined a project that makes a download manager so it would stop happening.
That's exactly right. And so like once I had it, actually it's ironic because once I had an Ubuntu Live CD, one of my friends came over like the next day and just handed me like a bootable, CD. And I was like, are you serious? Like I could have used this like 2 weeks ago.
Of course.
But yeah. And back then it was so cool too. Cause I felt like a techno sorcerer, there were so many like little Linux tools that were just incredibly neat or useful. And especially for like even troubleshooting, I mean, they're still around, but for troubleshooting like my friends' Windows computers, it's not working, it's because of X, Y, or Z. Oh, let's boot into this live disk and let's address it through this live disk.
I'm kind of shocked that people aren't like amazed by the fact that you're using something else to fix their machine that isn't the same operating system at all. Yeah. I've had like maybe 2 out of the 100 people that I've helped that with in that way go, oh, well, what are you using to fix it? Yeah.
So I think that most of the time people didn't remotely realize like what was happening. Like I said, I say techno sorcery. It really was like no one, like it was all magic. Like somehow, this kid comes over, he's fixing my computer. Who knows what he's doing? He's like he's conjuring some kind of magic over there in front of the computer, and then it's fixed. And it's still kind of like that to this day.
The terminal makes you feel powerful, man. I remember the first, because I'm the newest one of everybody in Linux. And I remember the first time where the terminal finally clicked and I was doing commands out of my head and I'm like, I'm like a real hacker now. Like it just feels powerful, you know?
They are like magical incantations. I think I told Brian Lunduk that once, like we were talking about it. And when you first get to that point that you know your way around, you feel like I know all these magical incantations that I can type in and make the computer do what I want it to do.
Yeah.
Some of that's, I think, as we progress further and further, as we have more time with this technology, with technology in general, especially when it comes to, computers, we abstract away from, all of the nuts and bolts that make up an operating system.
Right.
So I think now less and less, you're going to have less and less stories like ours, of tinkering and learning this stuff, because even the geeky kids, I talk a lot to young people in high school, just as part of like, I enjoy doing that. And these are techie kids, but they're almost like nothing exposes them to that. Used to get exposed to that in Windows or in, even Mac, in the mainline operating systems, because they did not account for most of, like, there were a lot of reasons you had to touch, the registry in Windows and things like that.
Yep.
Yeah. And as far as like the Chrome OS and stuff, there's none of that basically. Yeah.
Exactly. It's all abstracted away. And so you don't see that. You don't hear as many stories like this. And so I'm curious to see how this new generation of techies, what their stories are. Like my story is, finding Linux, I can customize all the things. I do think there will be geeks like us, who fall into Linux one way or another, but I'm curious what their stories are going to be, how they're going to, it's probably our phones,
more than likely it's phones or tablets or something like that.
Stuff onto it. But I'm very curious to see where that next generation comes from. So anyway, that's a very long version of getting introduced to Linux. We're only through one question.
Well, speaking of the next generation, how about the next generation of technology in itself? So you've described yourself previously as a technologist. So what are your favorite emerging technologies that you're looking at?
Machine learning. I used a lot of that at Mycroft. Nice. I still play around with machine learning. I think I have this conversation all the time because people ask me about it because of my background at Mycroft, because we had a lot of instances where we were trying to train models to understand human speech. And that was really fun, but it also, you begin to see a trend where it's like, wow, this is completely achievable. Given if we have a big enough data set, this is achievable. What else is achievable? What else can we automate? And then the realization I came to, and some people might disagree, is you can automate almost anything. And so that has a lot of really interesting societal consequences. Because I think that there's a lot of people who believe that their jobs are safe, who believe that they can't be replaced. But I tell them all the time, I'm sure my job can be replaced. I'm sure that we'll have machines that can have this conversation, within my lifetime. So what does that mean? I mean, they may not have, but I do think that there's going to come a point where, for instance, you call a business, 9 times out of 10, you already get machines. They're just not very good. They're not very fun to talk to. Right. But eventually you'll be able to, have a conversation with a machine that will ask you about your day and have a really normal sounding conversation. And
there've been recent demonstrations that kind of show that that's possible.
Yeah, with Google Duplex. And so the question is, we have as technologists and as a wider society, but it'll hit us first. We have so many neat conversations to have around what that looks like. And then the repercussions of that is, what does society look like when, so many things can be automated? What are we going to set limits on what can be automated, or are we going to, see a big change in everything? And so I think that when we talk about the next step, it's definitely machine learning, and what the repercussions of that look like, I don't know, but it'll be big. It'll be much bigger than this than the mobile, the last thing, which is apps and mobile. This will be much, much, much bigger.
Right.
Fortunately, it's all running on Linux. So
as long as we don't lose the ability to have a conversation with people, normal people, regular people.
We just won't know that whether or not they're people or not.
Right.
Yeah. Rocco, it will not change.
Right.
Don't worry.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get to that change, though, they're going to have to be programmed as to what it is you do. So before we invite the robot back onto the next live stream, what's your current working day like? What does the community manager for Thunderbird get up to on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. Well, just to give some background on Thunderbird, Thunderbird is a fairly long-standing project that used to be under the Mozilla Corporation list of projects, so that would include Firefox. And this idea was to create a mail client that really just allowed you to be more productive. And here, not too long ago, I think it was 2014, Mozilla Corporation changed their strategy and focused on some other products and gave Thunderbird over to the community. We still have a financial home in the Mozilla Foundation, which is the nonprofit Mozilla arm, but the project is entirely run by the community and a council elected by the community. Nice. So that's yearly, every year, the community elects 7 members of the community who have been contributors to serve on the council. So the council decided to hire me. Fortunately, we still have donations, and that's very, very helpful because it allows us to hire engineers to make sure that everything continues to build and work, and developers to address bugs. And then, of course, they hired me because they felt like we needed to go in a new direction and continue to address concerns of contributors, bring in new contributors, and just in general, just rebuild the community, because the community is one that in Thunderbird is one that has been around for a long time, but the software landscape is a lot different than it was when Thunderbird started. And so my day generally consists of speaking to contributors, speaking to the press or other media, and finally just working on getting people involved, whether that's by just simply downloading and becoming a user of Thunderbird, by contributing code or designs or ideas, or finally, giving a fiscal donation. In the event that you don't feel like you can make any contribution to the project itself, it helps a lot to have the money to make sure that Thunderbird remains a stable, active platform.
I mean, that's one of the things we keep trying to bring to the forefront in a lot of discussions here recently. And I think last week it was Sparky Linux related we were talking about, where they're different, looking for, funds to help out with this stuff. So that's definitely a great way that people can contribute. And we think it should be highlighted, not something people kind of shy away from, because we use these products. We love these products. You got to support these products out there if you want to keep them around and have them continue to advance.
And Thunderbird, something that, when people talk about, when people shame donation requests, like I've seen that in some open source projects, they don't realize, even not counting people's time, if you think everyone who gives open source should be a volunteer, everyone who contributes to an open source project should be a volunteer, that's whatever. But honestly, Thunderbird has 26 million users. So we have a pretty significant infrastructure just to make sure that Thunderbird is downloadable at any point in the day.
Can you say that number again? I think I misunderstood you. What was that number?
We have 26 million users.
Oh my God.
And so we have to just make sure that everybody's getting updates, everybody's able to download Thunderbird, and that Thunderbird is building every day. And that's not counting anything else that we have to do for the development of Thunderbird. That's just counting you being able to download the final product. So there's a lot. That is not cheap.
No.
And we distribute to, we distribute in so many different languages, so many different regions. We have different versions of the website. You can go and view the website in some crazy amount of languages. And that is just not, it's not easy to do that. It's just not easy to make sure that everyone everywhere can use Thunderbird. And that is very, very hard. And so that's what the donations go to, is making sure that you can get Thunderbird, you can use Thunderbird, and that it's safe and secure and respects your privacy and stable, and it works. So,
nice.
So anyway, that's my day is generally just making sure that people are contributing to Thunderbird, people are aware of Thunderbird, and that we continue to receive financial backing as well.
Well, one of the reasons you have 26 million users is because of the stability of Thunderbird and how well it works. So when you became the community manager, what did you find as your biggest hurdle to help the Thunderbird project out with?
Sure. It's an old project. And I think, relatively, if you look at where I've come from, and I've come from a startup that I co-founded, Mycroft, and then a relatively startup-like company, System76. It's been around for 10 years, but it's still, growing very fast.
Right.
And so the idea there is a lot of things aren't in place. So you're constantly trying to put things in place. We need this, we need to do this, we need to do this. Every day it's like it's almost like you're realizing something's missing that needs to be done. In Thunderbird, it's the exact opposite. There are many, many things in place. And every day you're realizing that there's something that's existing in place. And then you're seeing whether or not it's still working, whether or not it's still, if it's a contributor resources, you're finding them every day and you're realizing, oh, maybe these need to be updated, or maybe these aren't even helpful anymore. Mm-hmm. And, or there are these personalities in the project that are clashing, but they've both been there for, since its inception. And so you're kind of acting as a mediator between those. There are so many new challenges with coming into an existing large project that are totally different than, trying to go as fast as possible and build up things as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And so I think the biggest hurdle has been just that it's a big old project. And so there are so many, I would say so many tendrils coming off of the project that you discover new ones every day, and you have to figure out whether or not they're helpful and whether or not they're driving towards Thunderbird's goals and vision.
So obviously when you came on board, you were working on some of those things that you wanted to tackle with a very, very well-established infrastructure. But you also had some experience with System76, which we've also had on the show before when you were working with them. Were there any things that you learned at System76 that you then took and applied to your position as community manager at Thunderbird?
Sure. Yeah. At System76, I continued to make friends in the open source community, make acquaintance with various people in the media and in the tech media. And that's been really, really helpful to bring those along to this project, because everyone knows Thunderbird. Most techies know Thunderbird.
Yeah.
But until I got there, before I actually joined, I did this thing where I called up friends and asked them, what do you think of Thunderbird? And, nice. And what I heard was they were like, is Thunderbird still being developed? And I was like, okay, I marked that down in the book, and it's like this, and that was the number one response. So that was number one, what I knew had to be addressed. But it was only through those connections that I made it at System76 and before then, Mycroft, that I was able to call on these people who I consider plugged into the open source and world and in the tech world.
It's such an important point you bring up, because I see this time and time again, even in videos that I'm doing today, where people come back and say, wow, that looks really neat. Is it still being developed? And then when I'm like, what are they talking about? I go to the website and see there's no updates, or there's no community outreach or information coming out. And I think it's an adjustment period, because in the last 2 years I've been within Linux has blown up in just those 2 years. Like I went from, it kind of felt like a niche product to, wow, there is a gigantic community around this product, and it's a community, it's a love of the OS, all these things. But I don't know that everyone has adjusted from the amount of kind of spotlight and outreach that Linux has now to the fact that you've got to do more of that communication to talk about what's going on with your product to make it look fresh. Otherwise, people might assume it's gone away, right? Yeah, so that's very interesting.
Yeah, especially because you see a lot of other projects filling the Thunderbird space, or at least when I first came on, I felt like there were a lot of other projects that were being adopted, even though they didn't have the maturity or the same feature set of Thunderbird. They were being adopted in part because they thought these projects were alive and growing, and they thought Thunderbird was dead or dying. So just addressing that has been a big part of what I've been doing, is just addressing that perception. And I think we've come a long way. We've seen various indicators that, with more contributors knocking on the door and saying, how can I help? More people coming in and saying, I don't really know what I can do, but let me see what I can do. And then finally, we have more users. We have our beta has seen record numbers each month being downloaded more and more.
Congratulations on that. That's great.
Yeah. So people are curious again. They're wanting to look at the beta because they want to know what's happening with Thunderbird and where it's going. So yeah. So I think that has been, hopefully, is being addressed, and hopefully that trend continues. But yeah, it's important to let your users and let your contributors know that you're still open for business, and hopefully we can reclaim some of those users who have left us for less mature projects just because of that perception.
Nice.
So you were at System 76. You still have people there that you talk to. Do you get to play with the lasers they have in their factory?
Best question ever.
I haven't got to play with the lasers in their factory, but I've been traveling quite a bit. I've been visiting family and because I work remotely now, and so I'm not tied to one physical location most of the time. So I haven't been back to Denver, is what I'm trying to tell you. I haven't been back to Denver very much. And so I need to go back to Denver and force somebody to take me through there.
Yeah. If you could get us some secret video of those lasers. We keep telling them we want to get in there and play with the lasers ourselves.
Well, maybe I'll put a secret camera somewhere in my body.
Yeah.
This is gonna hurt me attack out now.
For some reason they don't want to let us in and play with them. I don't know why.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's really, we're laser focused, in fact. So it's
it'll probably give it away if you have us on camera, because you'll hear us geek squealing in the background when we see the laser shooting stuff. So
For sure, but yeah, I never got to play with the lasers, and that is unfortunate because the lasers came after I left. But I did see a lot of things that I'm still probably not supposed to talk about, and so
let's talk about them.
No, I feel like I don't think I'm actually under, and I don't know what I'm under. I'd have to look and see, but I will say that none of this is new. All of this is driving toward a strategy that they developed, and it's been around for a while. They've been going towards this goal of making their own, making everything in-house, and that will allow them to really create some unique products that address specific requests, from their customers, from the Linux community, and there were a lot of exciting ideas when I was there, and they've had quite a lot more time to ideate since I left. So I'm eager to see what they come up with. Somebody said they're using Pop! OS today.
Yep.
That was the that happened while I was there, and that was a long conversation and a lot of putting things up on the board and saying, what is missing from the current Linux distributions out there, and do we think that X, Y, or Z is going to implement these? And after multiple conversations with different projects, we found out that maybe there were some things that should be done, by System 76 to add value, and that's what they did. That's what they pursued. And so, there are still things that I think were on the board that haven't been implemented yet. And so,
I think it's great, dude. I mean, like, I had the opportunity to, like, recently I did something to my hard drive, and we won't go into that, but I had the opportunity to either install regular Ubuntu or Pop! OS, and I chose to install Pop! OS because I do think that they've done some unique things to it, and I think it's awesome.
That art too. That art. Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that you've got a beta out that more and more people are downloading every day. So I think the latest release is 52.8, and that was in April last year. When can we get excited and get a new Thunderbird release out? When's it due?
It is due this week.
Wow!
Wow!
Yeah. We didn't even time that way. That's awesome.
I don't know if it's tomorrow or the next day, but I think it's they said early this week. So I think they're just making sure everything's solid, and we should see it here in the next couple of days.
Nice.
So what are some of the features that people can look forward to when this new version comes out? Because we're monitoring, we're live streaming, we have chat going on, and I don't know if you've noticed, but people love Thunderbird. I can tell it in the chat. People saying it's rocking their world, they love it, it's their go-to. So very, very good. People were loving it. What are some features all these people giving all this love can look forward to seeing?
Sure. So I think the first thing is that they're going to notice is that the look of Thunderbird is different. This is still an iterative thing, but it has the quantum-y, photon.
Photon, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
So we're talking, square tabs and a few other visual changes that put it more in line with what you've seen with Firefox. But a lot of people don't know this, but Firefox and Thunderbird share a code base. And so a lot of these things, that get rolled into Firefox, we get. So that means, some of those, hopefully some of those people might notice some performance improvements, at least when it comes to
very cool
parts of the UI and if they load any HTML content. There are a lot of little things is what I'll say. There's a lot of little things. I have the release notes up, but there are various improvements to the calendar. There's various improvements to templating, so creating email templates. And then, of course, there's the composer and creating messages. Chat has improved. That's because we had another project that came in and joined Thunderbird, and they are incorporating their
That's awesome. Yeah.
chat expertise into Thunderbird. And
Nice.
So I'm trying to think of like what the thing that I noticed most was the improvements to the changes. Some people get really mad if I call them improvements.
Yeah.
The change to the look and feel of Thunderbird. I just feel like it feels more modern. And, and I feel like that is good for the project. And I feel like that is a really positive move.
I think in an odd way, you changing the theming of Thunderbird might reinvigorate the fact that people think it's being actively developed. Because when you just change everyday working sections in the background, people don't really notice them. They just take them for granted.
Mm-hmm.
They don't see the vast amount of work. But, a nice big brand new, here's the new look. And people go, wow, this is being worked on. Crazy, but that's just the way the human brain works.
I agree. There are a lot of little things that mean a lot to certain subsets of people, you know, because I'll be talking to someone about the new release and they'll say, I can't believe this change. This is so great. This makes my workflow so much better. And it's something that I didn't even realize was a part of Thunderbird, you know? And so it's really good. It's going in a positive direction. And I think that even throughout the point releases of 60, which is the next release, that we'll continue to see a lot of really great improvements.
Well,
Awesome.
does the latest, the latest iterations of Firefox has Quantum, and that was obviously some improvements to the speed and everything. So is that going to be in Thunderbird and help boost Thunderbird, or? Yeah,
there are various improvements to the performance that came in 60, but I think that we still have work to do in that area because there are a lot. Mail is just one of these things where performance is really important, and when you have a small inbox, you know, you might not really notice all that much issues, but when you have some of our users have magnificently large
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, with tons and tons of.
He was looking right at you, Rocco. Yeah. It's like they know from the entire development crew about Rocco's mailbox size.
Yep.
But there's just like there are some people who are like, I've got gigs and gigs of email in my archives and, you know, in various folders, and so we really are hoping to continue to address performance and make the experience one that doesn't leave you waiting and sighing at any point. And I think we're driving towards that. I think we have a ways to go, but I think this is the beginning of that process of really. And there are lots of plumbing. There's lots of plumbing that probably needs to happen, and we've hired on 2 developers to address things low level, you know, long standing Thunderbird design choices in order to improve performance.
Did I mention that my Thunderbird folder is 27 gigabytes?
Oh my gosh.
I was about to say I thought I had a lot, but no.
You guys are going to have to start working on a petabyte infrastructure.
But I want to say with that, Thunderbird is the only mail client out there that can handle that.
Yeah.
Hands down.
What's really cool about having you on the show is we're all Thunderbird fans. That's what we use. And we've tried other ones. You know, we try everything because we have news articles and things that pop up on the show. And there's some great features in other mail clients as well. But Thunderbird is the go-to. It's the one we rely on for the show to get to the emails, to get to the listeners, to discuss with them, because it just works, right? It's just a very stable platform you can trust. And within that, you know, you guys have a huge community base. 26 million is what an amazing accomplishment already for Thunderbird. But are there any plans, you know, you talked about some of the stuff you guys are doing. How are you going to reinvigorate that base of 26 million? Are there any plans to grow that even further?
I think part of it is Thunderbird should be looked at as a platform. And I think Thunderbird loses if we try to do everything ourselves and implement every feature ourselves. However, I think if we can empower our people creating extensions, creating add-ons, creating themes, et cetera, that we can really continue to differentiate ourselves from the other projects that are out there, and also really create something that serves all these a variety of users' needs, which is what I'm finding to be one of the most consistent themes in talking to our users, is that some people are using Thunderbird in really interesting or weird ways. But that is why they're using Thunderbird.
Yeah.
It's because they have a specific workflow, and certain extensions or certain tools in Thunderbird allow them to be more effective at what they're trying to accomplish and be more productive. And so I think we have to really focus on Thunderbird as a platform and what will continue to make it the best platform for communication, and specifically email. But, you know, there are a lot of people using it for IRC. There are a lot of people using it for other chat. There's some people using it for news. So
Yep.
RSS feeds or news groups. And
I know
so,
someone who just uses for IRC and RSS.
Yeah. And so we really have to focus on ensuring that as a platform, it remains strong. People can continue to contribute and improve Thunderbird for everyone and all use cases.
Nice.
And that makes it very robust. It makes it very big. It makes it sometimes maybe seem a little bloated, but conversely, you could have, we shouldn't do the Apple thing, which is strip it down to the, lowest common denominator, because I just don't think that's what our users want.
Well, that's what got you into
Right.
Linux originally. We were talking about earlier was your ability to tweak and change things. And you just talk, same thing with Thunderbird, the ability to tweak and change things and do unique things with it. That's what makes it cool. So I love that. I love that.
And
you
I
guys
think-
are keeping it fun.
I think that's how it would get lost in the shuffle of all the other email clients. If you do strip it down, then there is nothing to differentiate it from anything else.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I have users in the community iterating that to me every day. So
Linux people are opinionated? I've never heard of this.
yeah. But you have some really fantastic and interesting use cases for Thunderbird, and I think that's just awesome. There are people who have very, very interesting jobs, where I know of one guy who has like some ungodly amount of like email templates. And it's just like when he's communicating with people, he's just like push, that's out, push, that's out. And these are really complicated emails, but he has like all of the syntax right so that it fills in the name and all this different information and all these different fields. And I can't imagine, he's told me before, he can't imagine life without Thunderbird. Like, it would just completely screw everything up for him. So he's very invested in Thunderbird as a platform, and I think that's good. I think that's great.
Yeah, so we'll just switching little bases a little bit. There's things that Thunderbird doesn't have right now, such as like a webmail client, and there's been a lot of movement for some people, especially in the people who like the stripped down aspects of like Gmail and Apple and stuff like that. Is there any kind of plans for Thunderbird to do a webmail compatible type of thing? So you could use Thunderbird on your desktop client, but also maybe do like a self-hosted webmail client as well, something like that. Yeah,
there's been discussion on and off about that. It's hard to say, because I don't necessarily see that happening throughout the course of this year. So between this release and the next release, I don't see that happening. However, I could see it happening. There is a path that the community goes down that makes that possible.
Very interesting.
I think right now there continues to be conversations about it, but I think right now some of from what I would guess, and this is just me speculating on what I read, because as community manager, I certainly don't go up on a hill and like dictate where the community goes. Like, that's not how that works. So I'm just a participant, in the conversation around where it's going and what we're doing. And
yeah, remember, that's not how it works, Rocco.
Yeah, sure.
You can't be a dictator, Rocco.
Yeah, I shouldn't be.
Yeah, and so in the conversations, there have been conversations around like, is it possible to make Thunderbird into some kind of application that runs in a browser, or that or possibly, everyone's going to hate me for saying this, but like an Electron app or some kind of JavaScript mod, one of these modern HTML JavaScript apps that runs everywhere. But I think right now the focus is addressing problems with the Thunderbird code base, addressing long-standing bugs, addressing long-standing feature requests, addressing performance issues, and driving towards a Thunderbird that is stable and a good platform to have as a base.
Yeah.
Then there's a question of, because we're based off of Firefox, Firefox has a mobile application. Is that a possibility? There are a lot of questions around what's possible, going forward.
Just say yes. Just say yes.
Well, and this is something maybe your community can help us decide, because right now a mobile client is a lot of work. It seems like a lot of work. And I've talked about different initiatives that we could try. It'd probably take a few full-time developers just to build the groundwork there. And so I've talked about, should we do a campaign, a crowdfunding campaign or a donations campaign with the goal being we can hire developers to just focus on creating a mobile version of Thunderbird. Is that something that would entice the community? Is that something that interests the community? There are a lot of questions around what's the best way to use our resources available. And so maybe the community can ping us on Twitter and Facebook or email me and let me know what they think about that. If they
hold on to your inbox, because you're going to get a lot.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be a
good thing is Thunderbird can handle it, but you're going to get a lot, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It was interesting having a conversation about that sort of like self-hosting mail and maybe setting up your own servers, because I noticed that when you first install Thunderbird, it gives you the option to create an email account. I think it's with Gandhi and Hover. So, I mean, surely they would be impacted upon you choosing a cloud-based option. But my question relates to, what's your relationship with Gandhi at the moment? And how does that work in setting one up? I mean, I've always had my own email address, so I've never explored that avenue. So what does that offer you that's good for the Thunderbird user?
Sure. Gandhi, our relationship to Gandhi is that they offer email account. It's paid. You can have your own domain tied to it, like it sounds like you have. And it just, having it in there is an option for somebody who doesn't already have an existing account to go and sign up and set up their own, email domain. They give us a certain cut of, anyone who signs up there. And so that's helpful to us. It helps us pay for obviously all the things we laid out before. We've talked about, are there any other providers who would be appealing to our user base to have in there? And so we've debated a few of those. There are quite a few privacy focused providers now. Would those be interesting to have in there?
Yeah.
And so we're looking into that. But that's what we get out of that relationship with Gandhi is our users are able to create custom email domains, and in return we're able to get if the user spends a certain amount, we're able to get a certain percentage, and we're able to use that for all the things I outlined before. And that's really helpful. And I'd love to see more providers in there. So if there's anyone here who runs an email service, watching, who'd love to be listed there, I'd love to have that conversation. And I think we're kind of figuring that out too, because that happened during the Mozilla Corporation days. And fortunately that deal has remained in place. But we're trying to see what feels right now that it's governed by, the community, and what feels fair and what actually helps us. So, and what partners would be interested in working with. There are some people who I don't think that are necessarily good partners for us, and there are some people who I think are. And so, where do we draw that line, and who makes a good partner? These are good questions, and probably questions that the community should be interested in giving feedback on. For instance, is Gmail a good partner? Do you feel like they fulfill the certain requirements? Yeah, I see some shaking heads. But that's the question, right? It's like, do we want to encourage someone to create an account with a Gmail or someone else who's maybe
Proton Mail, maybe something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so these are all great questions. And I think we'll see some movement in that area, in the near future, but all the way we would love to have feedback on who people think would be good partners.
Well, that's what I like is, you've talked about this throughout. You want to know what the community feels like, weigh in on it. So if you love Thunderbird, and clearly a lot of people do on Twitch and YouTube, be part of that discussion and help, guide that to where you want it to be. Because clearly that's something you guys look at before you're making a decision, which is awesome.
Well, the Gmail option, I think, should be in there just as a feature for users, but I don't think it would help you guys much out as far as like getting a cut of that, because I don't think Google's willing to share.
But willing to take, but not share.
They want you to share.
I think, too, that there's a question about what our role is as one of the most prominent open source email projects. Probably the most prominent. I think that's possible.
I would say the most.
Probably, yeah.
To shape conversations around email providers. What is our role? What is our moral obligation? Because unlike these other folks, we're not driven by profit. So what is our role? How should we be talking about this? And I think it's a good question, because my instinct is to say, when you're communicating, your communications between you and another person should be private and secure. And I think our users probably feel the same way. But I feel scared speaking for them. Maybe most of them don't care. Mm-hmm. But I feel like maybe it's our obligation to say, here are providers who respect your privacy, when you talk about creating an account, and your security. And this is why we recommend them, because they're interested in your privacy and your security.
Yep. So you talk about, the Thunderbird Corporation, where it used to be. And, obviously Mozilla is in the news nowadays with a lot of things. Some people are on Mozilla's side, some people are not. So what is the current relationship between Mozilla and Thunderbird?
The Mozilla Foundation and the Mozilla Corporation do offer some really fantastic things to us. So some of our infrastructure is hosted on Mozilla servers, and that's really, really helpful. When they're willing to keep that stuff up for us, that's really amazing.
Right.
We're transferring some of this over, but there's still a lot of support that they're able to give us. The Mozilla Corporation, the Mozilla Foundation is our legal and financial home. So even though we solicit the donations, that has to go somewhere. There has to be a bank account that goes into, and the Mozilla Foundation is that financial home for us. And they offer us legal support. And, I probably bug them all the time asking questions. And so they help us out in that way. And of course, everyone in Mozilla, most people in Mozilla have been very open to supporting us if asked directly. If we say, you work on this part of the Firefox stack, or you play this role, we really could use your advice, support, etc. A lot of folks are really open to helping us, even though they don't have any real obligation to do so. And that's really great. And that also speaks to open source, because we hack on the same code base that Firefox does. So if we're around, we're another set of eyes all the time watching that code base and providing feedback. And so, it is in their best interest, I think, to have a sister project who can help them create a fantastic product.
Right. So it's more of they're supportive, but they don't really control anything.
That's right.
Okay. So this just changed directions a little bit. Talking about Thunderbird, and we all know that Thunderbird is a fantastic email client and has all the features you could even possibly imagine, and things that you would be shocked that it's even there. Like a lot of people are surprised that there's an RSS feed reader and stuff like that. But what do you think that are the biggest advantages that Thunderbird has over the competitors like Geary or Evolution, for example?
Well, I think the thing that struck me the most each time I use it is just searching in Thunderbird. You can really filter down and down and down and down and down. And as deep down that rabbit hole that you want to go, like you can go there. And so that's always been a favorite feature of mine. I think that the other thing is, if you really start looking at the add-ons, and you can find some really specific add-ons that do things that, like there's a add-on called Thunderbird Conversations, which gives you that almost Gmail-esque view. When you open up a email thread, it has like the picture, next to the email, and I don't know if you guys have used Gmail all that much, but they have the little, I'd call them like cards or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Where it's like you're in an email thread and there's like your card, which is the email you maybe originally sent, and then you scroll down and there's like the card for the reply, and et cetera, et cetera.
It's referred to in some cases like there's a plugin for conversations, is what they call it.
Yeah, and we have a long standing add-on that provides that same kind of experience.
I think I included that immediately as soon as I saw it was there. I was like, "Yep, I like this all in one." Exactly,
and so there are a lot of things like that, and so I think extensions is the second part of that story. Like a lot of people use Enigmail, to automatically encrypt their email and decrypt incoming emails, and so I think that if someone is looking at Thunderbird, they install it, use it for a little bit, get your brain around how it works, and then go look at the add-ons and see if there's any feature that you like that you might think is missing in Thunderbird, and see if there's an add-on that addresses that for you. And then you'll probably find others that you weren't aware of that do things that maybe you think, oh, well, that is nice. That's a nice little feature to have.
Yeah. So the third-party extensions are available to add in different features. One of them is for PGP encryption, for instance. Everyone is talking, well, not everyone should be talking, but the geekier folks are talking about security, encryption, these type of things. Is there any plans from Thunderbird to include options like this by default, where you don't even have to get an extension? It's just encryption's kind of built into the interface.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can currently do encryption without Enigmail, but Enigmail makes it so that whenever an email comes in that's encrypted, you don't have to manage, your keys. Your keys, they're installed, they're ready to go. It decrypts or encrypts, whatever the case may be when you're, whether you're receiving. So, but I think that the answer to the question is yes. We've had long conversations around incorporating Enigmail into core Thunderbird, and I think that would probably be a good step for Thunderbird, because I think that with the different things that we now know governments are doing in order to, monitor communications, I think it's a natural step to include things that enable encryption by default in Thunderbird, or at least make it easy to do so. And so I think that will eventually happen. I don't know what the timeline looks like for that, but conversations are happening and have happened and are continuing to happen. And so I think that we'll see that become more and more of a focus. And I know that in the community I've advocated for that, and I know a lot of other people have too, and which is making privacy and encryption easier by default in Thunderbird. I think that's a conversation that we're going to continue to have, and I don't see that going away, because I think we're just going to continue to learn more and more about how companies and governments are monitoring our communications.
Yep.
And
it seems like every day there's a new article about it. Yep.
Yeah, and I think it's very good. And also I think about, we're very Western world centric sometimes when we talk about this.
It's true.
But there are parts of the world where there's
that's
a lot
normal. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot more at stake. You know,
Yep.
you really don't want to be a Chinese dissident. You really don't want to be a Russian dissident, you know. And then there are places like, you know, North Korea where like they face a lot of even more substantial challenges.
Sure. Yep.
And so there it might be a matter of like life and death whether or not your communications are encrypted. And so I think we as the open source community should be seeing how we can create better privacy tools, because over here it's good for restricting people from seeing our communications, but and that can be life or death, but over there these tools may be like incredibly important. And I think that
especially for like reporters and stuff like that in the areas as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially even Western reporters visiting these countries, you know, they're trying to get information out. And so I think, and this is something that I hadn't thought about so much when I first came onto Thunderbird, but then when I learned that multiple journalists were using Thunderbird and sending encrypted email on Thunderbird, especially around eFail, you know, like people were emailing me, they wanted minute by minute you know, updates on the state of encrypted communication in Thunderbird, which I'm not laughing at them wanting that. It's incredibly important. And I think that was kind of an eye opener for me that we really have to be on top of this, because it's very, very, very important to many of our users, and it could be very dangerous to them if what they're sending isn't private, isn't secure.
Right. Well, that's a very heavy subject, and I hate to go back to a lighter subject right away, but it's something that I was looking for you to clarify. I've always said in the past that Thunderbird is the most, stable email client out there, but it definitely needs a facelift to make it modern. And you had talked about changes in the upcoming release. Now, if you can clarify, does that include like the projects like the monorail theme? Is that going to be incorporated into Thunderbird, or any features of that going in?
So I know elements were incorporated into Thunderbird, and I thought that a while back I was under the impression that monorail itself would be the default theme in Thunderbird, but I think that got backed away from, because I know that's not the case with the beta. And so, but I do think a lot of the elements of that have been incorporated, and we've seen a lot of icons be updated in the application, as well as, various, like I said, small visual changes that have made it better to use. However, going forward, we still have conversations with the monorail team around, how that might be improved. We've had lots of designers come in and offer up ideas, and we've even had a usability study. It was mostly focused on privacy and security tools and setting them up in Thunderbird, but all of that influences, how we address the UX and UI to show people, to guide people to where they're trying to go more easily, and just make it more beautiful. I think that there's something to be said about, especially with email. I don't know about you guys, but when I'm working, my email is constantly open.
Yep.
And, throughout the day, I'm responding to email. And so if it's beautiful, if it's a nice environment to be in, it makes that even less painful, because email can be painful.
Yes, it can. And you're singing to Rocco's heart, because he's all about theming, and everything to him is about theming.
Yeah, but one of my biggest things with Thunderbird is the inability to change the subject line size to make it a double line, so that you can see the mail recipient, the to and from, and the subject itself in a double line. And I have not been able to figure out how to do that. So these are things that I need.
Things that are working of very specific workflows.
Yeah, but you look at any of the modern clients out there, the modern looking clients, most of them have a very tall subject line. Like it's a double line, whether it be on other platforms like Windows or whether it be MailSpring or.
So I'm curious, you're talking about this thing the specific feature that you're interested in or enhancement. Do you know, is there a bug open, Rocco? Is there anyone I can ping to look at your...
Wow, bug?
Get your,
a bug
did
report?
you report a bug, Rocco?
No, I didn't report a bug.
Did you?
I did go searching through the Mozilla, what is it? The Mozilla, whatever. Bugzilla, whatever you call it. And I did go searching through that. And there were instances where people said, do this or put this in your CSS and it'll fix it. But most of the time, and I don't know if it's because the code base changes, but it doesn't always honor that, or it'll honor that for a while. And then with the next release, it would stop working. Right. So okay. So just as this is a fun thing here. So what do you want to happen, Rocco?
He's going to open a bug report for
Good. I love it. All right.
Bug
So
report open.
you have
I've already got it. It's. Can I share my screen? Does that work?
that would mess up the recording though.
But keep going. Let's get this bug report open for Rocco.
So if you look at the mail client, you have your.
Oh, wait. Let me just make sure I've got all this right. It's in the message compose window.
No, it's
in the receive.
If you're looking at main Thunderbird and you are seeing your accounts on the left, I have a vertical view, so I have the mail recipients and the subject in the middle, and then the view of the display of the email on the right. So that middle view where you see the subject lines of all your emails is probably, I don't want to say like 3 or 4 pixels high, when other mail clients have it larger, like maybe 8 or 10 pixels high, so you can see more information. And I think, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. And it can be really small. I think the monorail theme has it larger, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. Okay. So let me change this thing. Not in the live bug reporting.
I love it. I've got told to RTFM from developers, but I never had one open a bug report for me, Rocco. You win that award, my friend.
Okay, here we go. So this is mail window front end, and it says the component is problems with mail window, standalone message window, sidebar content, toolbar dialogues, etc. User interface and functionality problems within 3-pane mail window and standalone message window. Okay, I think that's right. I think we're in the right one. What version are you using?
I don't know. Let me open it up and find out.
Well, we'll just put unspecified.
It should be the latest version that is in 52. Ubuntu base.
Yeah, 52.
Okay.
So this is interesting because I would call this more of a feature request than a bug.
So I've got it listed as under severity. I've got it listed as an enhancement.
Ah, right. Okay.
Nice. But that's a good point, Zeb. A lot of people would not have thought to report it because it's just maybe something a part of their workflow or whatnot. But I think what Ryan's doing is not only demonstrating how important it is to do this stuff, but showing that you can request enhancements through the bug.
And teaching Rocco how to do bug reports.
Wow. Live bug reporting. Only on Destination Linux.
I'm making the summary. Mail subject line too small. Want ability to easily change size.
Yep. Pretty much.
Fair?
Yeah. Works for me.
Okay. All right. Let's put a description in here, Rocco. So try to describe it for me again, but let's try to do maybe. I think the subject mostly has what we want here, but
the subject line height should be adjustable so that if people want it small like it is by default, that's fine. But it should be adjustable for people who want to make it larger to see more information. It's almost like a double line. So the top half of it, you can see the subject, and the bottom half, you can see the recipients. So it's not all squished. And you can't do it just by raising the font either, because you can raise the font, but the line doesn't actually grow. So
I'm only doing this because I have been receiving quite a lot of enhancements, but I receive them in my inbox. And I've tried to put as many of those in the bug tracker as possible. But the problem is that the people who are passionate about it, really should be CC'd or be the main people on those bugs. And I do CC them, but that way they can answer the questions about the specifics. And that's where you're getting CC'd in this bug.
So in a future release, when people have a, changeable subject line, potentially, you can thank Rocco every time you see that. It's the Rocco effect. Yeah, it's the Rocco effect. In fact, in the feature release, can you put Rocco's name in there? That would be fantastic. Wow.
Here, we'll put a note.
I mean, I ended up in Mate's release notes. Rocco can end up in Thunderbird's release notes.
This bug report was created during the live broadcast of Destination Linux.
That's the way to get our name out there.
Yep.
Requested by Rocco.
Nice.
Here is the link to the video.
Love it. So while we're finishing up the bug report, Rocco, you want to get into the next section we wanted to talk about? Because we wanted to get into some Mycroft talk here.
All right.
Sure.
So, yeah. Are you, you said you co-founded Mycroft. Are you still involved in Mycroft, and how's the project going?
So I'm not actively involved in Mycroft, and I don't own any stake in the company anymore. But I still believe in the initial goals of the project, and I still have friends who contribute to the project. So, and I did go not too long ago and help them with their second Kickstarter. Like I said, I feel like that's important because the goals of the project, which is a virtual assistant that is open source and not selling your data, I think is an important goal. The question to me is whether or not Mycroft will fulfill that goal. I don't know. That is something that weighs on me is my baby, going to ultimately achieve its set goal.
Well, let's step back there for a second for our listeners. What is Mycroft if they haven't heard of it? Your baby you're talking about here. What does it represent? What can it do?
So Mycroft is an open source personal assistant like Amazon, Alexa, or the Amazon Echo, or Google Assistant, or Siri. The goal originally was to create, an alternative to Siri and Google Assistant. Back then, when we first started it, Alexa was and the Amazon Echo were not really out yet. Like, we knew they were coming out, but they weren't really out. And then, they came in they're very good tools, but each of these tools, you have no reasonable expectation of privacy, and essentially you're bugging your house is how I feel about it.
Yep.
And if you can't audit the code on that device, I feel like once you put them in, you have no grounds to.
Well, yeah, the only option you have is to unplug it.
Well, to talk about that just a little bit, I brought one of these into my home through the Amazon Media Player device. So to watch content, I forget what they called exactly.
The Fire TV.
But it has the Fire TV, and it has Siri built into it. Then I saw all this stuff coming out in the news where you could go and look up what it was recording. Well, I figured it would be the times where I said, hey, look up, this movie. But there were moments where it was popping on intermittently of recordings throughout the day of various discussions happening where I guess it thought it heard Alexa or something going on there. And it was very, it was just kind of shocking that stuff was there, and that it kept hearing itself, even though in the conversation you can't hear it all. It's just little clips. It must have heard something to trigger, or at least you hope it did, and wasn't just randomly popping on. It is something that still creates, without putting on a tinfoil hat, a lot of discomfort to have those type of devices in the home.
Sure. I think that my idea for Mycroft or another project that hopes to accomplish the same thing is, if I were creating it again today, and I even proposed this when we started it, is I would do a Kickstarter around the actual server component, have a pre-made box that you can plug in your house with the software installed, the back-end software, that all of those queries and everything go and are processed by that box in your home. And yeah, if they have to reach out and get like the weather data from somewhere else, or like, whatever third-party data they have to, at least the hub that hears the information that you're saying is in your home. It's open source, it's manageable. You can go in there, you can manage the updates, you can change it if you want to. But I feel like that is the important thing.
Yeah.
And it's not just important to individuals, also enterprises. I feel like a lot of enterprises probably would like to incorporate some of this voice command and control, but they don't want their IP floating out of the organization, or any other secrets, or, or even just, the thing is with Alexa and Google Assistant is I don't want my conversations going out. I really, really don't. Like, I know how easily these things pick up on the wrong stuff, and I just don't want that out there. Like, it'd be like, I just feel like that's just not good. And also, because we can't audit the code, I'm very worried about someone being able to turn these things on remotely and listen on what you're saying. Yeah. And like we talked about earlier, we already live in a world where I think that governments and corporations already abuse our privacy, and to have the ability to turn this stuff on and listen to everything that goes on your home is really scary. It's why I really, really want a webcam in my home, but I'm not going to set up one of the
cloud-based ones. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. Because I don't want that. I can leave my home, but if I set that up, it's going to my own server. It's not going to,
Right.
But the problem you face is that they roll in really enticing features into these things. So because of the scale of data that they have, they can roll in some really nice features, which is enticing. I use Google Photos. I really don't want to be using Google Photos, but there are a lot of really enticing features because I'll take a picture. In fact, this happened the other day. This is some insight into me, but for some reason, I can't stop myself from changing cars every 2 years. It's not like
the same problem.
It's not cheap, and I don't know why I do it, but like I'll just be driving past one of the places where they're selling cars, and I'm just like, man,
I want to give them money today.
Yeah. And I don't do it that impulsively, but it's just like I think that I'm always going to have a car payment, and whether or not I really want to always have a car payment, it's just like I've already budgeted for it, so I might as well be driving the car that I want. But anyway, someone was talking to me about my cars, and they're like, yeah, like I really liked that one car that you drove, and they named it. It was a red Mazda, and I was like, and I started talking to them about it. And I was like, yeah, and it did this, that, and the other. And they're like, no, not that one, the other one. And I was like, I don't know what car you're talking about. I didn't drive another red Mazda. And so he's like, yeah, you did. And I looked in Google Photos and I typed in red Mazda. And then I saw this car and I was like, of course, yeah, I did drive that, But you know what I'm saying? Like the features like that I can type in things specifically and have it, because of its machine learning that it's done, bring up exactly what I'm looking for.
It sees the icon on the car and it says the color, and it does like it. Yeah.
And so the point is that I think that one challenge that open source software is going to have in competing with these is how do you compete with that? It takes a lot, because we don't have the privacy focused solutions don't have the same scale of data that, a Google or an Amazon or, Microsoft have to incorporate these kind of features. Mm-hmm. So I could set up my webcam, but, I imagine that when it comes to specific things like being able to recognize a certain person in my house or whatever, which might be interesting, but I may not be able to have that. So I think Mycroft faces some of the same challenges when it goes up against these guys, which Absolutely. Is why it has to double down on the privacy, and say like this is the focus.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Apart from privacy and the anti-listening and the fact that you're open source and people can see what it is that Mycroft is doing, what are some of the advantages that you think are there above your commercial counterparts?
I think that one of the things with Mycroft would be the ability to incorporate these one-off things that only you do, and having the ability to change the source code itself is something that, yes, it's niche. Maybe that's all it's ever going to be, but that's an important thing, because if you're deploying an Alexa in any device, like now you can do it they have that program where you can take Alexa and you can incorporate it into your own third-party device. But the problem is always going to be that if there's some use case that innately Alexa doesn't support, you aren't going to be able to address that with their stack. Whereas with Mycroft, you could address that. You could change fundamentally how Mycroft works. For instance, you can pare down Mycroft into simply listening and recording everything in a room and transcribing it.
Wow.
And that is one thing that you could do.
And it transcribes it locally.
Yeah, and you could, well, I mean, not necessarily.
Stores it locally.
Yeah, you could store it locally. You could have it write out, cat out to a file, and that is something you could do. And this empowers people to try things that aren't part of what Mycroft's focus is. And I think that's where the power comes from, is being able to do something completely unique that the creators haven't foreseen someone doing.
So they doing their Mycroft is open to open source community, contributing code and things like that to it?
Yeah, it's got it's got all that stuff up on GitHub.
Yeah, they call them skills, right? Where you can make your own custom
that's right.
modifications and stuff like that.
Awesome.
And I've actually worked on a couple things with like contributing some aspects to it, like trying to get some Cody stuff working.
Yep.
And so the because of open source and because of the main focus of the show is Destination Linux. So one of the things that we have to ask you, what is your go-to distro and desktop environment?
Sure. This is a complicated question.
Okay, so why is it Kubuntu?
Not Kubuntu. I'm on elementary right now.
Nice.
But and Cassidy would tell you this because he worked with me at System 76. I know Daniel Foray quite well. But there are specific design. And I'm not talking about like a UI design features or UX design features, but certain design decisions that they've made that I fundamentally disagree with. So Pop! OS and Ubuntu have been very enticing for me to return to, because Cassidy and I used to argue about this all the time. He wants they have this vision in elementary of all these native applications, which they do have a lot of native applications that have been created for elementary, and leaving essentially like the Electron apps and, a lot of these third-party apps out of the App Center, which I think is a mega super big mistake.
I would agree with that.
Because I think that we finally are at a point where you can install a Linux distribution and you can install most of the productivity apps that you need to in order to make it through your day as like an average information worker in an office. And then to not have them in the App Center renders the App Center completely useless. And I'll tell you why. The moment you go to an App Center and you don't find a specific app that you're looking for is the moment that you never go back to the App Center again. Because if I go for Slack and Slack isn't there, then I'm not going to go back to look for another application someone tells me about. I'm going to go to the internet. At that point, the internet is going to give me some kind of way to install this application that doesn't involve going to the App Center. It's going to say, copy this PPA, install via command, and I'll never end up going in there again. My biggest thing at System 76 was we are finally starting to figure out distribution. Is snaps and Flatpaks and app images are the right way. We just need to make sure that those things that we already have are available in the app centers on the distributions.
Yeah, but I think that's a good point, though. I mean, you can see both sides. Where I can see the idea of the App Center, where you want a uniform, cohesive environment with apps that are really, really good. But I can also see the other side where you might want other apps that aren't available, and they do detract from being able to use that as a wide brand.
Yeah. Well, I think my deal is that the App Center is where you want people to go to the trusted source to get software. Installing a PPA from some third party that, frankly, a lot of people are never going to look and see whether or not there have been any changes to the actual like package that they're getting. Like they may get Thunderbird, but the maintainer of that PPA could have put anything in there that he wants. And I think that is bad. I think that is bad. I think you want to be able to get your software from a trusted source. If you install distribution, you're saying, I trust this source, because frankly, you're installing the operating system that they put out. So, I mean, like anything that they have root access to your machine. Right. That is 100% the case. So,
there's an argument that says some people will say, like the maintainers would argue that they have, because they've been approved and they've been, background checked, I guess, the better, lack of a better word, is that they are providing that security of mind. So like the maintainers themselves, because in order to get into the repo, the maintainers have to be there to help the project get into the repo. So I mean, in the same sense, I agree that having the official developers having more control and being quicker access to the user is a valid point and is a good point about security. I think that's one of the things they would say is like, the repos themselves, because they have maintainers, is also a level of security.
No, but the repos do have a level of security. I'm talking about when you go and you just grab a PPA,
PPA,
off the internet. That is a bad thing. Whereas, if something's in the App Center and that repository has a maintainer and it's right, and they're active in the, like for instance, Debian community or upstream to the Ubuntu community or whatever the distro is, like you're getting it from what I consider to be a trusted source.
Right. I didn't hear the PPA part. Yeah, I agree. The PPAs, you're flipping a coin at that point. Like maybe it's not.
But the biggest thing is I do think the elementary guys have a lot of things right, which is why it's still on my machine. There are a lot of really small, and they build up over time, all these things that are small, but they're nice. But I think that that Ubuntu and Pop! OS are addressing this software problem that I've had with Linux forever, which is that the user should be able to go to the App Store, download a piece of software, and get on their way. And if it's available for Linux, it should be in the App Store. Snaps are important and Flatpaks are important because they take the onus off of they take a lot of the onus off of the maintainers and, packaging the software for the specific distro. Whereas if you're bundling things with an app image, a Flatpak or a Snap, the actual person who produces the software can do that. Granted, in a lot of cases, you might still be going out to the internet for that. But Ubuntu's starting to make it so that those snaps can be in the App Store alongside the, things that are coming from the other repos. And,
I'm a big fan of the snaps, the universal formats in general.
Well, what about the snaps that are now being snapped, games that are being snapped by the work from the podcaster that shall not be named? I mean, that's the important stuff going on here.
Yes, it is.
You guys are talking about all these programs and being developed, but gaming is where it's at, which leads us to a question, because I want to get into the gaming section before we run out of time here. Ryan, are you a gamer? And if so, what games are you playing, man?
I fancy myself a gamer. I got into computing because I wanted to create games, and
nice.
And I used to make a lot of RPGs. I was a big RPG guy, but I will say that even though I still would call myself a gamer, I'm pretty sure I don't pass the because
the gamer test.
Because I have all these games. I have more games than I've ever had in my life, and I play them so little that if people ask me, have you played this game? It's like, well, kind of. I own it.
I installed it. I opened it up for 10 minutes and then I went back and played some other game because I forgot I had it in my library. Yeah.
Well, it's like I never feel like I have time for it,
Well, there's a game that doesn't take much time, maybe 10, 15 minutes here and there, and it's called Ballistic Overkill.
It's an FPS shooter, so maybe we can get you in there sometime.
And in fact, we're looking at doing a US versus UK competition charity stream. So, we're going to go up against Wimpy and Popey here for that.
Boy.
So,
Well, I'd almost have to join just to
yeah,
exactly.
I have seen them in Rocket League, and so I saw Popey maybe.
Yeah.
When we saw them playing, it gave us a lot of hope that we're going to win this.
So I'd love to have more time to play. I really loved Rocket League, which I didn't expect at all.
It's a fantastic game.
It is
one of the best.
And then XCOM. They came to Linux, and I played a lot of both XCOM games, which is actually, this is the problem, because I'd never sit down for 10 minutes. If I did, then I wouldn't be so afraid of starting the game. But the problem is like, I feel like every time I start it, it's like, okay, I'm off work now. It's like 6 or 7 o'clock. I'm just going to play for like an hour, and then I'll go and do the rest of the stuff that I need to do this evening. And then
4 hours later,
it's like 2 a.m, and it's like, how long have I been here? Why did I play this long? I didn't mean to do this. And it's because I believe in the struggle of the main character, I can't just stop when the aliens are like bursting out of the ship. Like, somebody's got to do this job. Somebody's got to send these aliens back to their home planet.
And it might as well be me, right?
Yeah. It can only be me. I mean, let's be honest.
Exactly.
Well, let's be the joy kill here then and bring you back to work. You've had your gameplay for today. We've got a new version of Thunderbird coming out, and you've explained it's got a nice altered UI, so it's going to look different for the user. But going, let's say, 4 or 5 years ahead, if you think that far, where do you think Thunderbird will be? What features do you think people can look forward to?
Sure, I'd love to see Thunderbird incorporate more of the privacy and security features that I talked about. I'd also love to see, this is me speaking for myself now, I'd love to see a mobile Thunderbird because I don't think there are enough open source mobile email clients. Like I think there are 2 that I can think of off the top of my head. And
I only got one. It's like,
I'm sure there are more, but I'm concerned about that because if I've done these really informal polls where I ask people what email clients are using on their phone, and among even open source folks, there's a lot of them who aren't using an open source email client on their phone. And so, and I'd love to see, so for me, it's productivity, privacy, and security. And I'd love to see more productivity built into Thunderbird. There are a lot of really great features that you can do. For instance, in Thunderbird, you can right-click on an email and convert it to a task, which I love. I would love to see more going into surfacing these features. And then if we had a mobile client, syncing your tasks and email accounts across multiple devices. So I think that would be really great because, and maybe not even between a mobile client and a desktop and the desktop client, but just between multiple desktop clients because I have it on my laptop and on my desktop. And the fact that I can create a task in one and not have it over in the other is kind of problematic. And so just a lot of little productivity enhancements that I'd like to see. And of course, along with Rocco, I'd like to see a lot of improvements just to the UX of Thunderbird. There are some parts that, in my opinion, are not just outdated, because I think a lot of people think that means that I want to like incorporate some brand new UI that, is like changes everything and breaks everything for their workflow. Right. I think just the menu, the double pane menu in Thunderbird, if you click the little hamburger menu, is really painful because I'll be going and I hover over an element that has a little arrow and another menu comes out and I go over that, but then sometimes I don't go exactly directly.
It drops away and you got to go back. Yeah.
And that's just like,
I'm so glad to hear this is not just me.
Yeah.
I mean, technically there's been like some tests and focus groups and stuff that's kind of shown that the hamburger menu itself is not really a good thing. It's a benefit to what it looks like, but it's kind of annoying just in general to use because typically there's no shortcuts for it. And
looks pretty, but not more efficient. Type of thing. Yeah,
exactly. So there's been a lot of people like kind of making rants about that particular design decision over the past 5 to 7 years or so. That's becoming a new fad.
Yeah, I read one of those. I don't remember the guy's name, but I am opinionated when it comes to you guys know I changed all my Linux, desktop environments growing up, but yeah. I don't actually like the top, menu bar. I think it just burns pixels that I don't want it to burn. And now this is not saying that this is going to happen in Thunderbird. Thunderbird already has the dual menu, so you can have the menu bar if you want, or you can have the hamburger menu, but you can have both. I think it's good to have them both as an option. For me personally, I don't want to burn those pixels, and if they did the single pane that's in Firefox now for the Thunderbird menu where, you click on something and then that single pane changes to have those options, for me, that would be great, and keyboard shortcuts are really important though. That is something that has to always remain intact because without keyboard shortcuts, an application is completely useless to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I definitely agree about the file menu system where I'm not a big fan of that. That does waste pixels. And I do agree that the hamburger menu should be better than it is. So
I like the idea of having a drop-down arrow that is like where the hamburger menu could be. And then it just tells you when you click that button, here's how to quickly access. So you hit Alt and then it shows you that menu and you get away from Alt and it's gone. So you can still have all those
features. What are you talking
Michael,
about, Michael? That sounds terrible.
That does sound terrible.
What? It's the same. It's literally the same thing as a hamburger menu.
It's
the same thing as an area hamburger menu. It just also displays the menu that you want.
Michael touches on something that the one feature I want back from Unity is the HUD.
Yes,
I thought that was the direction to go, and I really regret that it's not around.
Yeah, it's you can technically get it in Ubuntu Mate if you want, but that's about it.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Ryan, can you file a bug for that for a feature? No, I'm just kidding.
Let's incorporate HUD in just Thunderbird.
That's it. All right, so Thunderbird has obviously got a ton of users. You talked about what it needs for to be able to just have the downloads available. So how can people get involved with Thunderbird? What help do you need? What are some of the ways normal people can give ideas and feedback besides report a bug?
Sure. Well, first off, I will say that reporting a bug is important.
Shots fired, Rocco.
Wow.
Well, I mean, and I just mean that well, listen, we're talking about the double pane menu. I have not No, I've not filed an enhancement request for the double pane or for the single pane menu. So I'm also guilty of this. There are some things that I can complain about for weeks and forget to file a bug. But
it's true.
But I did just put in our little chat, and if somebody can push that out on like YouTube or whatever, where they can file a Thunderbird specific bug. The other thing I would say is there's Thunderbird.net, which is where the Thunderbird website lives now. This is new. It used to be at thunderbird.mozilla.org, I think, or maybe it was mozilla.com/Thunderbird. But there is a Get Involved link on there now, and I'm putting that in there. It hasn't been localized into every language yet, so this is a English page, but I put that in our little chat too. There's a bunch of ways to get involved and where you can go to do that. This is a new page, so feedback is very welcome. And if you go to the bottom of the page, there's a contribute to this site link, which will take you to the GitHub page for the website, which is important because if you have feedback about anything on the website, but specifically this Get Involved page, or you see something missing, or you think that there's something that can improve it, please go to that website and file a bug, say like, this could be improved in this way. I will personally respond to it.
Wow.
So, and then finally, you can download Thunderbird and use it. That is sometimes I almost forget to say it because it's like the most basic thing, but you can download Thunderbird and use it, and that's important. And I think that most people would enjoy it if they have email, especially if they have a lot of email. And then something I know I just said finally, but of course you can donate to Thunderbird. And if you want to see something like a mobile client or I don't know, if you want to see Thunderbird just continue to improve and look better and feel nicer and run more performant, everything helps. We aren't backed by Mozilla money anymore, so everything is donations. So we really rely on that in order to pay our developers and pay for our infrastructure. And that's also on Thunderbird.net as well. There's just a big donate button.
Awesome.
Nice. Well, Ryan, it was an awesome conversation with you. I want to personally thank you for all the work that you've done in the open source community. Yes. Whether it be from Mycroft, System76, Thunderbird. It's much appreciated because without guys like you, we wouldn't be where we are.
Thank you.
I want to thank the guys at Thunderbird as well for all of the work that they put into the best email client out there right now. So, well, man, maybe we will have you back on the show the next time you have a release or something, and we can talk, or maybe you can join us in the Ballistic Overkill gaming.
Yeah.
I'll try it. If it's on Linux, I'll try it.
It's on Linux. It's actually on sale right now, too, with the summer sale.
Yeah.
The Steam summer sale.
That's dangerous. I haven't even opened.
Good time to get it now, just saying.
Yeah, Steam summer sale is dangerous.
Yeah. And let's not forget as well, if you've got any questions that you'd like Ryan to answer, send them through to us at comments@destinationlinux.org, and we'll try and get them through to Ryan, or we'll try and get the answers for you. Because comments is part of the feedback of the show that we all enjoy, and we all want to know what you think about it, how it went well, how you can do it better. And if you can't do a little email and you want to just leave a little comment, drop one at the bottom of the YouTube video when it comes out next Friday. And you can also comment on the Destination Linux website as well under each episode. You can let us know what you think, or you can post any questions. So keep that information coming in, because we really do enjoy receiving it.
Also, just in case if you're watching on the recorded version, this particular interview was recorded live. And so if you're we do often, our episodes are live. Sometimes the interviews are not live. Sometimes they are. Thank you very much for Ryan for willing to do the interview live. And so typically we have about every other week or so, there's a live stream for the episode, or we have fantastic interview guests that are willing to do it live as well. And so if you're interested in checking out that, you can go to the destinationlinux.org, and you can find links to the Twitch and the YouTube on that website. And also, just to let you know that if you're a patron of the podcast, you don't have to worry about whether it's live or not, because you can join us on the Zoom chat every single time, regardless of it being a live stream or not. So be sure, if you are a patron, be sure to check that out each week.
Plus, you get the post and pre-show access as well. Appreciate all the patron support out there. And we had the coolest thing happen, Rocco, in our Telegram group for Destination Linux. This is something that I've played with Twitch and different things way back when, before I started Linux, before I started my YouTube channel. And I would watch this thing called a subscriber train, where you would see these up and coming kind of people doing their thing live on Twitch or live on YouTube, or podcasters or whatnot. And they would get these trains of subscribers that would happen, where everybody just starts getting super excited about the content. We've had some really cool episodes recently. This one definitely is going to be a great one with Ryan. And we had a patron train happen in Telegram, where it was kicked off and everyone started becoming patrons, which was really awesome for us. And one of those exciting things that I got to experience as someone who's part of the team producing this content, versus somebody just watching somebody else, which was just super neat. So thank you guys for that as well.
Yep. It was absolutely awesome. Again, Ryan, thank you for stopping in and joining us. We appreciate it.
No problem.
All right. That's it for us. Everybody have a great week. And remember, the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Destination Linux Podcast.
The overlay is perfect, Michael.
Wow.
Thank you.
He never says that.
It is perfect.
He's in a particularly good mood today. He must have ate his Wheaties.
Wow. I'm never in a good mood.
Just that he didn't eat Marmite.
He didn't eat Marmite.
That's why I'm in a good mood.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That stuff is
Marmite.
Disgusting.
Oh,
Yeah.
I could still smell it.
All right.
I tried to just bathe in mouthwash, and it's still.
I had a skunk spray on me so that I would smell better than the Marmite.
Interview, guys. We have an interview.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right.
Gotta act professional. Sorry, Ryan.
Welcome to the podcast.
Ryan's
sir.
never going to come back on this show. I can tell you that. Let's take a quick sound recording and see what everybody sounds like.
I sound glorious. You're welcome.
Of course.
Until you go his way or he passes out.
He's like a little girl, dude.
Worse. Even worse.
Where's he at, anyway?
I don't know.
He said he might be late because it
Probably doing his hair.
Probably.
Well, then never mind. Well, now I'm super mad.
I know, Michael.
Tell me what is and what is not worth something. How dare you?
You don't tell me what to do.
Yeah. You're not a part of the Antiques Roadshow. Tell me what something's worth. Maybe I don't want to.
Come on, Rocco. What is going on? You're supposed to be the one who's mature. The rest of us are supposed to be asking dumb questions. You're supposed to have it together, man.
You're right. I'll try harder. Maybe it's an issue between the chair and the keyboard.
Okay, here's the thing: is it's not as good as Dragon Dictation, no, because Dragon Dictation is the best.
Hi, Ryan.
But
hey, what's going on, man?
I don't know what's going on.
Wow.
Just been hanging out. I'm thinking about Ballistic Overkill right
Yeah,
now.
me too.
So
Trying to get some kills.
Here's the thing. The AI is cool, and it really works. It works decently for what it is. The speech thing that they're working on,
If we play Ballistic Overkill.
which is like an open source,
We ever get
like a whole open source ecosystem,
We'll get a
like
chance.
time system.
At some
they're
point,
gonna-
he's going to stop talking.
No, I'm purposefully stretching this issue, dude. And I have no problem with it. Thank you. I'm taking off this case.
We
No,
we-
I'm sorry,
I'm
Michael.
taking it off.
sorry.
we
Taking it off. I was talking
rude.
to Deb. Okay. Care what you guys are doing.
All right, I think we're live now. No thanks to you guys letting me know that we're live.
Hey, we're live.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I've not confirmed yet, so Michael could be lying. Hold on.
I was lying.
Rocco.
What's the-
That's not enough. I want 44 questions on Thunderbird, and then I'll be happy.
No. Then I'll consider being happy.
Yeah, I still won't be happy. You could have done better, but 44 is the minimum.
And I'll actually be disappointed that you didn't stick with 42. And perhaps after we get 42, we should then make sure that we do 15 for.
Our job is done here, Michael.
Yep, it's all done. It's perfect.
We win.
Shutting you guys off.
Yeah, there's about 4 pixel difference right now.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thanks, Michael.
No.
And just so you know, we're all terrible. So it's except for Rocco, he's a cheater. He hustles.
Yeah,
but everybody else is terrible.
terrible.
So it's okay. So you have to worry about.
Even if you need any tips about dusting your shelf behind you, Rocco can give them to you while we're playing.
Dude,
Sure.
dude.
Look at how spick and span it is,
It's
right?
a teaspoon of pledge.
I assumed that Ryan was right about Rocco's like on this next wall. He just got like this selection of dusters, and they're like special models, the ultimate duster. And then
Some
there's
people
like
have gun racks. He has duster racks.
Is there anything wrong with wanting it clean? I mean, I don't understand.
we're basically ashamed of ourselves.
Yes.
And
We're putting you down because of our lack of cleanliness.
I love the idea though that Rocco could just reach to his duster shelf and pull out like a duster and then like lock it and load it like
You're going down.
exactly.
this is gonna need the Duster 5000.
The ballistic duster.
Yeah, but it wouldn't have that cool sound. It would have to have some.
No, it does. Even a shelf.
You can mod it, Rocco. You can mod it. Or he just pulls a book and a shelf turns around and it's the collection of the dusters. It's all 007 like.
Yeah. That's when he's got a real job and he's got his friends there and he's like, and you get the mini duster, you know?
I'm the worst with names. I really am. That's like it's something I actually want to improve on. Like people with the name, understanding and remembering people's names.
Michael,
has been an issue.
Rocco.
Oh, who are you? I know I do a podcast with you guys every week, but I have no idea who you are. But Ryan's name I'll remember because that's a good name. You know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is going to be really confusing. Saying Ryan and Ryan, it's going to be really confusing.
Say right. you can just call me Das or Ryan something. I don't know.
Das Ryan.
Das Ryan. There you go.
Whatever.
Just call me Fedora.
You can call me Ice Pick.
Ice Pick.
I love it. Yes.
You don't want to know how I got that name.
Oh, I do really want to know how you got that name.
I love it.
But we can see.
Let's just say that everyone who knows its meaning was left on that mountain.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my first day at college. I was sitting in the cafeteria and somebody came in and was like, Ryan, and me and like 30 other people. Like, looked over there and I was like, yeah, I couldn't have a more unique name, and that's when I became Ice Pick.
It all comes full circle.
That's it. That was beautiful, man. Oh, well done, sir. Well done. Yeah. Should I wear the red hat today?
It's like you do matter, and people love you.
No, I'm going to stick with fedora forever. I'm telling you right now, at the last episode we do this year, I will still be on fedora.
Right, but when he says still be, he doesn't count the middle piece.
Shut up, Michael.
Hold on. Let me get that. Let me get that for you, Ryan.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that, Rocco.
Wow.
You're a true bro.
Wow. Rude.
The boss.
That's right. The boss.